how to strategize for success in the current economic climate. Hello, my name is Joanna Fatonji, and I am a strategic coach for women in corporate and in business. And due to the upcoming International Women's Day, one of my clients asked me if I could take part in a discussion that she's organizing. And she sent me the questions that are going to discuss. And I thought, let me share them with you too. So let's dive right in. So one of the question was, how do the current social and economic circumstances affect us as women? And how do we strategize for success? The first thing that we need to understand in order to understand our position in it and the global and also local climate is to understand this. That's why today I brought this sheet here to really dive in. Okay, so stay tuned. Okay, so the first thing we need to understand in order to know how we can get ahead is to know where we are. So, this is Maslow's pyramid of the hierarchy of needs. But I also want to add three other things that are part of this pyramid scheme called capitalism, patriarchy, and racism. We need to factor those things in because this is the world that we live in. And we can't be naive or thinking that we can't surpass those things because this system of hierarchy, the system of capitalism, racism, and patriarchy is in every one of us. That is the water that we swim in. It's the unconscious rules that we need to be aware of in order to get ourselves ahead. So, going back to the question, how does the actual social and economic climate has an effect on men and women in this society today? I'm going to dive into the pyramid and the hierarchy of needs, okay? So, the pyramid in itself is patriarchy. So the pyramid in itself is patriarchy, capitalism, and racism. Because before we had those concepts, there was no real hierarchy. It's the three man made power structures. These things are man made, and this is the world that we are experiencing at this moment and for thousands of years now. So we have to understand that this whole thing is man made, okay? But what is not man made is the the different levels of the hierarchy, okay? So these are things that all human needs. And the number one motivation for people's actions is always the pursuit of power and privilege, which is health, right? Good food. This is the first thing. Physiological needs. Physiological needs is the pursuit of power and privilege are what we see here. So every human being needs, okay, needs food, clothes, water, sex, and everything the body needs in order to survive, right? Very basic biological needs. That's the first thing that the human body, at this point I would also call it the human animal, needs, okay? Then the next thing is safety, right? this is where we speak about shelter, physiological safety. Physiological safety meaning having a place to stay, a place to sleep, a place to live, being protected and sheltered from the outside forces, from the weather, right? From the rain, the cold, the sun. We need physical safety. Okay. Then the next thing is love and belonging. We need to belong to a tribe because this will help us to survive. We need a group of people in order to survive, but also to nurture, right? There was one experiment, this is what I learned back in school, that when a child only gets food and no love, it will die. It was the Caspar Hauser experiment. So we need people, right? We need people in order to survive. We need the tribe in order to survive. So love and belonging is important. When we have that, the next thing, this is really when we get to esteem, and I personally call it, this is where we are in the Western world. We are all about esteem. We are all about status symbols. We are about positions, titles. We are about hierarchy. We are about privilege, prestige. We want to signal to which socio-economical class we belong, right? So this is also very important. This is what people pursue when they go for jobs in corporate or create something that has an outward signal of, again, power, privilege, esteem. Good. So when all of those needs are met, this is when we can actually pursue self actualization. Self actualization is becoming all you can be, fulfilling your potential, right? I put another level on top because I believe that this is the ultimate goal. We can only self actualize from a higher vantage point, which is also called self transcendence. There are different literatures that take those things into account. Self transcendence is self awareness, creating the part in ourselves that is able to observe ourselves. So, getting to the bird's eye view to actually look down on us, ourselves, and really evaluate where we are in health and relationships, the part of us that can reflect, right? The way we performed, the way we spoke, the way we interacted, the way we did things, the observer self, right? So we need even a higher higher vantage point to look down on ourselves in order to make ourselves into the best version of ourselves. Okay, so we need to understand this first. And again, the two motivations for human action is always power and privilege, because this is what ultimately leads to a better quality of life where all those needs and then wants are met. Good. Going back to the question of my client, she asked, how does the social and economic climate affect men and women? And again, I will elaborate even deeper on the question because I believe that she is asking, how does it affect the quality of life? And in order to create quality of life, we need all of that, and especially resources. We need resources, aka money, right? And how does the harsh climate where there's a lot of a right wing, where things of those three power structures become more and more visible? A level of racism, a level of patriarchy, and obviously it affects capitalism, our way to make money. So this is happening in society right now. So we have to be aware that those forces, right, are all encompassing. As I said, it's the water that we swim in. So the water that we swim in, we need to understand that the white, rich, old man is the one on top. That is a symbol of power. That is also a symbol of God, right? This is how we all have been brainwashed to believe that God is this old white man who bestows power on everybody. And if he doesn't approve of you, you will get punished. And this is how many people think, right? The rich old white man was is an invention of the white man. Okay, so we need to understand that and free ourselves of that in order to get ahead. But we need to understand that we can't just move the way we want. We have to take those things into consideration just as much as our pursuit for power and privilege through meeting all those needs. So you have to, number one, first, you have to know that you are in this power dynamic, you are in this hierarchy, you are in this pyramid scheme called capitalism, patriarchy, and racism, and you have to know your position. So that is the first thing that we have to assess. And I know that especially for the woman and her community that that I'm going to talk to, I know that most of these women are really still in those three. They're really much in those three. I wouldn't even necessarily say they are here. Maybe some of them have a pursuit of esteem, meaning having some kind of leverage in the capitalistic system, meaning a good job, education that is applicable to the marketplace, or a title, a role, some kind of leadership position, visibility, some kind of, yeah, some kind of power to affect change in society. So I believe most of them are really still here. So the number one thing that I would suggest here is definitely education, right? Pursuing education and pursuing a job that is safe, or a job that will actually make you money. That is very important. And to understand that those forces are in place and that you need to learn how to navigate through them. And you have to learn how to read the social cues to not get cut down by those forces, because people will always fight for their own space in the hierarchy. That's why people who have power don't necessarily give away their power. And if you are on the pursuit of power, you have to assume that you have power and build your privileges. I always like to call it privilege stacking. You need to learn how to privilege stack. And I'm going to be very honest. What are privileges? Again, it's power. It is some things that give you an advantage in this capitalistic system. So, number one, you can't change your race, you can't change your gender. I'm going to speak like that. I know some people do it, but it is a very, very extreme way of pursuing this game of life. So, what you can do is gain capitalistic advantages, and capitalistic leverage is, number one, the way you present yourself is very, very important, especially as a woman of color. You have to know how to present yourself, the way you do your hair, the way you groom yourself, right? The way you dress, the way your hygiene is, obviously, the way you present yourself, the way you speak, your articulation, your word, your choice of words, and your power to effect change and to influence people, to make them act, to make them take action to on your behalf, right? You have to learn how to use those things. And in today's day and age, use social media to have a voice, to be seen, to be heard. Again, because this is going to influence how much influence you have. So the more people are behind you and support you, the more capitalistic advantages you can create for yourself by also making money through your community or through your access to resources. And through resources, it's not only money, but it's also your network, right? Your network, people of power who can help you make effective decisions and therefore create change. Those things are very important in the capitalistic climate that we're in. And the more the conditions sharpen or the harsher they get, the more you have to really keep and double down on your privileges. Again, work on your looks, work on your presentation, present yourself, right? Get on social media, create a voice, have something to say, be seen, be heard, show your expertise. Those things are very important so you can leverage that into contacts, into a more powerful network, and ultimately into money, right? Because it's going to be exchange for exchange, value for value trade. Okay, the whole society is responsible for equality. The next question she asked was if equality was only up to the individual woman or if it is the responsibility of the whole society. And my honest question is again, going back to this power hierarchy, we have to understand it. People in power, the rich white old men who is at the top of this pyramid, and then the white woman, then other shades of white, including like light skinned Asian people, light skinned women, people of color, right? And then again, men, women, up till the darker tones, right? At the bottom of the hierarchy, and I'm going to say it the way it is through the man made power hierarchies, the darker the people, the less privilege they have, and especially women of color from the black, brown shade scale. That is the hierarchy. I didn't make that up, but that is the way it is. And we have to learn how to work with that, right? So, again, people in power don't like to give up. People in power don't like to give up power. People in power like to hold their position or even increase their power because power comes with privilege and resources, which ultimately leads to a better quality of life. And most people will get there by all means necessary, by exploiting others. So we can ask this question if equity, I would call it equity and equality, is a woman's responsibility or if it's the responsibility of the whole society. That's a very idealistic question, to be honest, because we could say it's a thing for the whole society, but it's not because people don't care. Most people are out here fending for themselves, rightly so. I am not for exploitation. I do believe in fair trade, but I also know the reality that most people do not engage in this conduct. So we have to be honest. If you want to have an idealistic answer to this question, we could say it's a topic that everybody should be concerned with. But no, people are motivated by the pursuit of power and privilege and resources to meet their own needs, the physiological needs, safety needs, belonging needs, esteem, right? Looking good, feeling good about yourself. And the tip of the arrow will self actualize, which is not many people in this whole global society, let alone self transcend in order to actually fulfill your potential on the physical plane. So, again, most people are working, using their time and energy and money and network to fulfill those needs. Yes. So, my honest question is it is an individual responsibility to help yourself gain capitalistic advantages, meaning more skills that actually count, meaning you are somebody who can actually solve people's problems in the capitalistic system, meaning helping people get more fit, more beautiful in the capitalistic system, because that is a privilege in the social capitalistic system that we live in. People want to look good, as I said, present well, speak well, right? Know how to move in society, know how to talk to people, make contacts, create allies, create a high value network. Those are skills. If you have those skills, use those skills to your advantage to create leverage in your own life, and therefore reach out to more people so they can pay you. I'm going to say that people will have to pay you so you can exchange your capital, your knowledge, wisdom for money. I hope that's clear, right? So you have to leverage, you have to gain skills, apply skills, amass resources, money, time, people, right? Contacts, your network. To then, if people want to get to the next level themselves, they will have to exchange money with you so you can continue to be on your pursuit for power and privilege, and people will learn from you how they can do the same. So that is my answer to the question. It's an individual responsibility to get ahead, and you have to know that nothing is for free. So if somebody really has the resources, the skills, the knowledge, the space to help you get ahead, you will have to pay them. Very easy. The third question is, what kind of prejudice, unconscious biases exist, and how do they affect your outcomes in life? And again, I'm going back to this because we can talk about this again and again, because this is what you need to understand. Every one of us was born into this hierarchical structure of patriarchy, capitalism, racism, which is a man-made system built to control resources, power, and privilege. That is the world that we live in, and it's not going to change anytime soon. So what kind of prejudice and unconscious bias do exist? Exactly what I just said, and I'm going to repeat myself. It is about gender. We can get back to this. It is about gender. So if you are a man in patriarchy, you're automatically favored because this world works on brute force. This is the advantage that men have over women, brute force, right? That's it. It's not about intelligence, it's not about skill, but many men use brute force and the understanding of this system to gain capitalistic advantages. So if you're a male, you are more privileged depending on what you do with it, but you're automatically more privileged. So that means if you are a woman, you're automatically less privileged in the hierarchy of power. The same thing with capitalism. If you are rich, if you are born into a privileged family, if you know how money works and you enjoy the privileges of money from an early age, because with money comes power, privilege, and leisure, right? Culture, good food, good water, right? A social life, talent, skill development, sports, music, travel, museums, things like that, culture, knowledge, a social conduct, all those things come when you have more money plus class. Because, of course, there are also people with money who have no class. But capitalism means if you have more money, you have more power. So if you come from a generationally poor family, you are disadvantaged in this system. Okay, so this is a prejudice and it's a reality. So if you come from poverty, people who have more capital, more privilege, more leverage in the society will see you as lesser than. That is just the truth. And then, of course, racism. If you're a white man, you have the most privilege. If you're a white woman, you have the second most privilege in this power hierarchy. Okay, good. So if you are a black person, that means in this man-made power construct, you are lesser than. Okay, and again, it goes from male then to female. Good. So these are all of the prejudice and all of the unconscious biases. Again, in order to counteract those prejudices, you will have to play into the game. You can't just rebel against it. You can't just make your own game up. It doesn't work. So if you are let's say, a woman from a poor background and you're black, and then the whole scale up to lighter skin, right? This whole topic of colorism, and then other ethnicities who are higher up in the ranking of racism, which is again man-made power structure. You are at the bottom of the hierarchy through this kind of setting. Okay, this is the prejudice. Woman, black, poor, you're at the bottom. That is brutal. I know it sounds so brutal, but that is how we need to see it. And then, in order to strategically get ahead. Okay. The fourth and last question my client asked me was, what can we do in our social settings and in our different roles in society in order to create more equality and equity for women? And one thing that I always like to say is, number one, it is an individual responsibility to understand this game, be very honest about where you are on this scale, where you are in your own life, and then heavily invest in yourself to get to the next level. And again, I'm going to say it. The first thing I believe that you can do is to learn how to move in society and gain capitalistic advantages, which is number one, your looks. Depending on how you look, the beauty standard also plays into all of that, and you have to play along. That is how I see it. Work on your body, work on your health, work on your presentation, your hair, your dress, the way you present yourself, body language, the way you speak. How effective can you communicate? Read, get knowledgeable, right? Speak for yourself, advocate for yourself, be seen, be heard, right? Have a presence. The next thing you can do is to pay other women for their services. This is one thing that I'm very passionate about, is in order to create equality and equity, women of color need to understand that you will not get ahead by paying another white man for his help. Even in the personal development industry. I have been in the personal development industry for the past 10 years now, and one thing just clicked for me when I found another woman of color mentor, because the personal development industry is a very privileged industry already, because this goes into the lineage of having a personal advisor, a sage, an astrologer, having a real professional advisor if you are a leader, like a king, like a monarch, like a high level business person. This is where the kind of life coaching industry comes from. It's being somebody who is aware of human nature, of power hierarchy, of the way people think and move and strategize, right? That is my role as a life coach, as a strategist that helps people get ahead. So the industry of consulting and coaching is a very privileged industry in itself. So it's mainly white men dominated. Yes, there are also white women who are privileged people as well, as we just learned through this hierarchy, right? So having other women of color who are up on the ladder, who have more capitalistic advantages, who have experience, who understand how to play this game themselves, pay them for their services, pay other women for their support, their services, their products, and create an economy where the money circulates amongst women and especially amongst women of color. Money is the number one resource that will shift the power dynamic of this so long upheld power play that we're all playing. And again, it will not change overnight. But the thing that you can do in order to really affect change is to get ahead in your own game and to pay another woman of color to help you get there. That is my personal take on it. If you really want to change your life and up level, come into my programs, be part of the community of women that are taking charge, that do what it takes to get ahead in this capitalistic system, who's not waiting, who's not praying, who's not riding on the coattail of another man, right? Another woman who is willing to do the work to get ahead in this capitalistic system and play the game and win the game. Those are the women in my community. If you want to work with me one-on-one, check out the links down in the description box below. Get ahead and know you have no time to waste. It's time to take action now, because this game will only change if you become an effective winner in this game. Until then, bye.